Hello, hello. Welcome to the Northern Power Women podcast in this, our very special International Women's Day theme. And we talk about International Women's Day a lot, and an awful lot of focus goes on that one day. But this year, we're creating a whole series of conversations around International Women's Day, and our theme being inspiring inclusion. And this year, we're focusing specifically around sport, the world of sport, the business of sport, and the amazing, phenomenal role models that work in and around the industry. And every week, I'm going to be joined by some very inspiring and insightful guests who can share what their story is and give you some of those top tips to help you navigate your career and your life, irrespective of what background you are, what status you are, what level of you are in your career. It's all about sharing and passing on this knowledge. So let us meet this week's guest. This week, I'm joined by the wonderful Miriam Walker-Khan, who is the diversity and inclusion reporter for Sky Sports News, and someone I spoke to just about a year ago, just before you were starting this job. Miriam, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. It feels like that year's gone very quickly.
I bet it has. And how have you settled into the new role? Not new now, I suppose, a year in.
Yeah, it's weird because I still feel really new. I think because I'm never really in the office. I'm always out and about. But it's been incredible. You know, I get to do some really, really exciting projects, big kind of hefty documentaries and docuseries, and just meet some incredible people. So I'm loving it. I'm loving the variety, and there's lots coming out this year. So yeah, loving it.
And this was a brand new role, wasn't it? The diversity and inclusion reporter for Sky Sports News.
Yeah, I think it was actually the first of that kind of role in the sports media industry too. So it's pretty epic, to be honest, to be doing it. I think it's something that a lot of people in the industry kind of do on the side, and I was definitely doing that when I worked at BBC Sport. I had a regular job. I was actually the younger audiences reporter at BBC Sports News, but on the side, so much of what I did was about, you know, giving voice to communities in sport that don't often have it, that are kind of erased from a lot of the stories. And so having the space and time to do a job like this at Sky is just incredible, and has been like really life-changing for me. I think it's given me a lot of confidence in telling these stories, and it kind of has got rid of my imposter syndrome in a way too. So yeah, I'm loving it.
And what has been your path to this role? Because I'm always fascinated how people get to where they get to, because there's never one straight route, is there? It's not something you suddenly decide on in school or college or whatever. This is what I'm going to do today. What has been your story?
Well, I am sadly not one of those people who's like, I always wanted to be a journalist. So I fell into it completely. I was a sprinter growing up. I did athletics and was quite ill when I was younger, so it didn't really work out for me because I was always injured due to that illness. And then at university one year, I just kind of happened to start writing for an athletics website from a guy who lived in Sheffield, my hometown, who set it up. And then it really just escalated. Like the website became bigger and bigger. And the next year, literally, I was interviewing kind of Usain Bolt and going on the Diamond League circuit. So it escalated in like an incredible way. And then I did a master's because it was the first year that you could get a postgrad loan. So then did my master's at Sheffield University at home in broadcast journalism. And then I still don't really know how this happened, but I got into the BBC's journalism training scheme, which is a big prestigious scheme that, you know, you never ever imagine you get told you won't get onto it because like 5,000 people apply. So at uni they're like, obviously apply, but like you're definitely not going to get it. And there was only one sport place, and I didn't apply for news. I only applied for the sport place, so I was slimming my chances down. But yeah, I got on that, which was, you know, absolutely the best thing that's ever happened to me, the most exciting thing. You get to train in all the different BBC Sports News departments, whether it's online, social media, television, radio. And then I got a job in television. So I was an assistant producer for a few years. And then I just went freelance. And even though I was freelance, I still did kind of majority of the work at the BBC. But I really wanted to become a reporter. And I think I knew that quite early on. I just like chatting to people. Even now people are like, oh, don't you want to be a presenter? And I'm like, absolutely not. Like I'm not good at reading auto cues. Reporting is for me, like, send me out, let me chat to people. And then, yeah, I eventually went back into the BBC as a senior reporter for younger audiences. And then it was a year ago that I made the move to Sky. And I think it's just, you do, obviously, you do so many jobs when you kind of climbing that ladder and working out what you want to do. And this job for me is just completely perfect. It is a dream job, and it's something I actually pitched to the BBC, and they said no, that we're not going to do that. So I think to do it at Sky, I kind of value it even more, and I'm very happy doing it. So
It's a real trailblazing role, isn't it? How would you describe the current state of diversity and inclusion across sport?
um, I think it's a bit of a mess, to be honest. I think, like a lot of industries, D&I has kind of become this like buzzword thing that has just fallen upon different industries, and a lot of the time people don't really know what it means, how to handle it, what the aim of it is. And I think in sport in particular, we're in a weird place where I think a lot of athletes, a lot of black athletes in particular, can be exploited. And so it's a strange place. Obviously, every sport is completely different. I grew up in athletics, which was, people described it as multicultural, which I don't think it is. I think there's a lot of black athletes, which is incredible. But there are, South Asian athletes. I did that sport for years, 12, 13 years. And apart from my brothers, the only other South Asian athlete I saw was like one guy from Leeds. So I think every sport is really different. And I don't think governing bodies have quite worked out like how to improve issues. Football in particular, I think there are so many issues with, the lack of diversity in the England women's team, and I don't think that's been tackled properly. And I also think in sport there are so many different organisations and governing bodies that don't work together. So yeah, I know it sounds really pessimistic, but I do think it is a bit of a mess, and I think it's difficult as well for media companies at the moment who are trying to make their workforces more diverse, because it's really hard to get that balance right. It's really hard to make sure you're developing people and people are being represented, but also keeping everyone else happy. So I think we're in a really difficult time, to be honest. And I think everyone ultimately just needs to do a bit more learning, like reading books and having the proper people doing the training and stuff, which often doesn't happen. But I'm really lucky that I work in a team that is super young, enthusiastic. People just get it, and I think that's really important. And I've got a boss, my line manager, who is absolutely incredible. And he's a white man, and he's leading, my role, my team, but he's absolutely the perfect person for that job because of like his knowledge and how he manages people. So I think, yeah, people just need to think a bit more.
And I think that thinking and that's intentional thinking. And you just talked about your boss, that advocacy, that male advocacy, white male advocacy is really important. How, that's got a big role to play, hasn't it?
Yeah, and he's a northerner, which helps. But yeah, absolutely. I think, that we talk a lot about allyship, and people often don't really know what that means. And I think my boss in particular, he's not someone who would, describe himself as an ally, but he absolutely is one. And I know that I can go to him with issues around my work, and, like, not just as a producer, but as a manager as well. And he's spot on with that. So I think it's really about like taking people for who they are, no matter where they're from, no matter their background. Yeah, we need representation, but we also need the right people in those roles. And I'm lucky with my manager that I've got that. And, I work with some incredible people, and I get to interview the most interesting people in sport, in my opinion. Like, I think, my job is very different, that I don't go and do the daily news conferences for football teams and stuff like that. So I get to kind of delve into huge issues that's for me like just really rewarding and great to work on.
Is there anything recently that you've been involved with that highlights some of the positive? Because it's prevalent, isn't it, to see all the negative stuff that's out there? But is there anything that you've been involved in that really highlights positive change and can give us all hope, Miriam?
I think there's something that I've been working on that's kind of changed my perception of what journalism is. So it's a brand new series that is coming out in March, and it was pitched to our team by a different group in Sky that's an all female group that just really were passionate about an idea that they had. And it's basically tackling different topics that athletes go through. So we've got everything from like OCD, pelvic floor health, grief, exercise safety, all these incredible topics that people don't really talk about, but athletes go through. And for me, it has been the most incredible project I've ever worked on, because I think going to people with such a specific niche and chatting about that for like an hour really, really opens people up. And I've been, I never cried in an interview before I started this series. Like, people have cried on me a lot, but I've never cried. And like the second interview, it was about grief and, miscarriage and losing a baby. And I cried. And I was like, this is really weird, because I was like, am I going to get sacked? Like, I was like, cut. But it happened twice after that, because we were talking about grief. It's quite triggering for me. And the first time I was genuinely really worried that I was going to get sacked, which is ridiculous because that would never happen. But the second and third time, I just kind of let myself do it, and it completely changed. Yeah, like I said, my perception of what a journalist is. I think we sit and we watch, especially in sport, a lot of men who are kind of middle-aged and very serious, and they are like newshound journalists, and I'm so far from that. So I've always felt a bit like, how do I fit into this industry? But this series has given me, I think, like a bit of a new identity as a journalist, because I'm able to just have those conversations and like be open about the fact that I also have emotions and that their stories are affecting me in that moment. So I'm so lucky that those people pitched this idea to us and let me present it, because I think it's going to be huge and really change things for people as well.
And I think that one of the ways that the media can impact the overall, sort of intention of change around diversity. It strikes me that what you're saying is you're an authentic and vulnerable journalist. We need more of you, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, when you go through lots of different life experiences, you just naturally are like that, and you're curious. And I think I guess like I didn't realize all this until the past year, but I'm someone that probably my strength is kind of getting people to open up through my warmth. Not really in like an intentional way, just because I kind of can relate to people maybe a bit more, or I've been through things, and I've let myself relate to people. I don't think, oh, I shouldn't say like I get that, but I've done that throughout my career. It's something that I did, even as a trainee. I remember doing a really hard interview about someone who was racially abused on a football pitch, and I said to him, like, I totally get this. Like, something very similar happened to me when I was younger, and you're really brave for like talking about it. And then he just opened up, and afterwards he was like, it's because of what you said to me before that I felt I could do that. And I think we don't do enough of that as journalists. Like, I think people that we interview, a lot of the time they're like very nervous. They don't really want to be interviewed, especially footballers. And so to know that they're talking to someone who gets it and understands and is not going to catch them out, I think is really important for them.
And what would you say? Because it's clear to me, sort of, since we last spoke about a year or so ago, I think this role has really unleashed that vulnerable journalism. And so for anyone listening out there who is that aspiring sports journalist or journalist really passionate about diversity and inclusion, how would you give them some advice to navigate and be able to contribute as themselves? Because this is a critical conversation we need to be having about D&I.
I would say exactly what you just said. I know this is like thrown around all the time, but genuinely, just be yourself. And I think in life, like, we spend so much time not doing that. Like, when I started at the BBC, I started dressing in a way that I wouldn't normally dress. Like, I'm a bit of a tomboy, and I started like wearing kind of more feminine clothes, which I wouldn't normally do, like work clothes. Whereas as soon as I went to Sky, when I met my boss, the first question was like, "Can I wear trainers on air?" And he was like, "Yep." And I was like, "Okay, great." And it sounds so silly, but just like wearing trainers, like sometimes wear a hoodie and a blazer, like I feel so calm and comfortable myself, and like I know that I'm going to get the best out of whoever I interview if I'm feeling calm. Because if I'm up nervous and stressed, which sometimes I am because I'm still kind of new, um, that interviewee is going to be. So I just think like be yourself, like think about the things that you bring to the table that are different, that are powerful as well. And when you do that and you know who you are, you're empowering yourself in any job that you do.
You talked about some of the interviews you do, and like sometimes, whether it be a footballer or I think doesn't really necessarily want to be interviewed, but you can get them to open up. But how do you see on a wider view athletes responding around discussions around diversity and inclusion in the sports media?
I think it really depends on like how much space and time they're given. Like I was saying, if you go to someone and you give them a topic to chat about for an hour, they're gonna really open up. I think if you just go to someone and you ask them loads of questions and one of them happens to be about something related to D&I, they're not going to feel that listened to. So I think now more and more, obviously, athletes are using their own platforms to tell their stories and use their voice, which I totally understand because the media can be really toxic and can twist things, and you don't want that kind of stuff to be twisted. They're not like little sound bites, they're not headlines, they're really important parts of someone's life. So I think people are definitely speaking up about it more and like eager to speak up about it because they're they're the really important stories in people's lives. They're not, they're not like the little things that they're the huge things that make people who they are. So I think people are definitely getting more open to sharing those stories.
And who do you think are those athletes out there that are becoming and have become those advocates for change and have influenced their communities?
I think globally, for me, definitely Serena Williams. Definitely, she's the most kind of
Hell yes.
yeah. And Alison Felix, actually, like she was for me a huge role model growing up, and I think especially later in her career and everything she's done off the track after her career, she is an incredible, incredible force. And it's really hard for athletes who are still competing. And I think the ones that do this stuff when they are competing, it's incredible. I also think in the England women's football team, Lotte Wubben-Moy is such a powerful voice and speaks so openly about things that a lot of white athletes don't talk about and refuse to talk about. And for me, that's really valuable, when someone's acknowledging their own privilege and they're trying to make things better. I think that's really incredible. So she's amazing. I don't know. I think like there's probably I interviewed Kelly Holmes recently, and for me that was just amazing because I've got like photos with her when I was 10 and stuff. But I think her story and the way she shared her story about coming out so late in life after obviously, being raided in the military, that's incredible. I just think we don't think enough about that kind of stuff and the history that athletes have gone through that's not even long ago. So that was definitely a highlight for me and really helped me personally as well. So
Nobody just pitches up at the track, do they, and gets a medal at the end of it. It doesn't. It's never like that. What do you hope to see over the next few years? Do you see it getting better? You've talked about as being, this is quite a challenging position, but can you see hope?
I can. I also think it depends on how we allow athletes to share their stories and even to protest. Obviously, there's a thing in the Olympics, and the IOC have Article 50, which means they can't protest at the Olympic Games, which, I'm sure we'll see a lot of stories surrounding that this year. I also think people kind of pick and choose when they want to talk about D&I. I think in sport, especially, last year we celebrated at the Women's World Cup. I was out in Australia. Everyone was kind of celebrating the fact that there was a hijabi woman for the first time playing on the Moroccan team. Yeah, it's incredible, but it's also 2024, and no one was talking about the fact that, in France the hijab is banned in sport. So I think there's a lot of hypocrites, to be honest, in the sport that don't want to address issues that mean that they're going to have to challenge power. So I think a lot needs to change, and a lot of people that don't put their money where their mouth is need to do some walking and less talking. But I think this year, hopefully, like I'm going to be doing a few projects and things like that, and hopefully we bring a bit more attention to it.
And I think having this new role for you, and giving you this platform and this space to be yourself and bring other people's real self out. I think you're part of the change, Miriam. I think you are an ultimate role model in what you're doing. And I think the conversation, as I say, that has changed from a year ago, because I think you are part of the change. And I thank you on behalf of our Northern Power Women Unbound out there for doing what you do. Thank you so much for joining me today and sharing this really critical and vital conversation.
Do you know what, Simone? Thank you so much, and thank you for everything you do, and thank you actually for calling that award Disruptor for Good, because when I got nominated for that, it was absolutely my favourite. My granddad always roasts me because I don't ever win awards, but I always get nominated, and it was my favourite award I've ever been nominated for, because I think it kind of empowers you to keep disrupting for good. So thank you so much for having me and empowering me.
Oh, yeah, we do like to be quite intentional with the titles of the awards, so they feel quite real, because there's no such thing as there is just a woman of the year or a man of the year or a leader of the year. I think it's a doing word, isn't it? It's like an active word, and you were totally valid and credible in that category. And so thank you so much. Really look forward to following and seeing these series when they come out as well, and giving these real conversations a real voice. So thank you so much, Miriam. And thank you to all of you for listening. We love getting your feedback. We know that the conversations that I am fortunate enough to have make a difference in your world, whether you're walking to work, whether you're walking the dog, whatever you're doing. Thank you so much for listening. Please do stay connected on all our socials at North Power Women on Twitter and Northern Power Women on all the other socials. And please leave us a review and let us know what you think, and enjoy the wider International Women's Day series that we've got this year, because it's really, really exciting. Thank you so much for listening. Stay connected with everything we do on our digital hub, wearepower.net. My name's Simone. This is the Northern Power Women podcast, a What Goes on Media production.